welcome to another 5-minute tutorial for the Level 3 Technical Certificate. In this session we're going to talk about the operation or operational parameters of the Flowbox, and there are 4 parameters I want to talk about in this session. First parameter is consistency, Flowbox consistency. As you can see here, we've got 2 sheets. This one has got fairly good formation, this one has terrible formation, very flocky. Areas of high consistency, areas of low sort of fibre density. Good formation is given because you've got low consistency, and this is because when you form the sheet, you want every fibre to fall down completely random angle, random orientation, random position, completely uninfluenced by anything else in the system. And the best way to get that is to have lots of water in between any one fibre and any other fibre. So we're talking about dilution. So the more dilute the system is, the more spread out the fibres will be, the less influence there will be by any other fibre, the more likely they are to fall down randomly. As you increase consistency, the fibres get closer together, they are very likely to interact with other fibres in the system, and therefore you'll get this sort of flocky appearance. So good formation, summary, good formation is caused by low consistency. That makes the fibres fall randomly. Poor formation, one of the reasons is you have high consistency and therefore the fibres interact with each other. The second of these 4 is the forming mode. The Flowbox has typically 2 forming modes. The vast majority of flow boxes are operated in what we call the velocity forming mode, particularly or generally tissue machines operate in the pressure forming mode. We're all aware of hose pipes. If you've ever used a hose pipe, you've got a certain water pressure, the water comes out of the hose pipe and it will go a certain distance. If you want to go a bit further and the jet of water just isn't reaching that, we all know what to do. You put your thumb over the end of the hose pipe. That reduces the surface area, so you've now got the same pressure the same force operating over a smaller area, therefore it increases the pressure. Therefore the water comes out faster and it can travel a greater distance. So this is what we're doing with the velocity forming mode. We've got the bottom slice lip and the top slice lip. The closer we bring these 2 together, the smaller the gap, the greater the pressure, the further the stock will shoot out onto the forming fabric before it lands. It will lift the top slice lip up, we've got a bigger gap, same force over a larger area, less pressure, the stock will only come out to here. So that's the velocity forming motion. As I said, vast majority of machines operate in that way. Pressure forming mode, particularly useful for tissue. We've said that tissue needs to have really good formation because it's so thin. It has to have the minimum number of imperfections or you're going to get a big problem with a sheet. And the way to get good formation is to have big dilution, as we saw a moment ago. If you've got a big dilution, that means you've got huge amounts of water to get rid of. So you need everything you can to help you get rid of all this extra water. So in pressure forming mode, we're actually forcing the water, the stock, through the wire. So we're not just allowing the stock to land on it, we're physically pushing it through to get rid of all that water. So that's the pressure forming mode. The third variable is efflux ratio. Efflux ratio is the ratio of the jet speed of the stock compared to the wire speed. And there are 2 modes for efflux ratio. We have what's called the rush and we have drag. In the rush formation, this means that the stock is travelling faster than the wire. So if the stock is travelling faster than the wire, if you imagine that this is a fibre, if the stock travels faster than the wire, if this is the wire, the fibre hits the wire, the front end of the fibre instantly slows down, but the back end is still travelling at a higher speed. So it will tumble over and it could land, as we see here, in any orientation. By landing in any orientation, it lands in all orientations. And if you have fibres in every orientation, when you come to do, for example, tensile measurements, you'll find the tensile measurement in the machine direction is exactly the same as the tensile measurement in the cross direction, or at least very similar. So MD and XD values will be very similar. And the term we use for that, of course, is a square sheet. If we take the other situation, drag. In drag, this means that the wire is travelling faster than the fibre. So again, if this is a fibre and it's coming along, it might come along like a javelin, be exactly the machine direction, it'll land on the wire and it will carry on. If the fibre comes out and it's at an angle, then as soon as that front end of the fibre hits the wire will drag it forward like that, and it will align all the fibres in the machine direction. So all the fibres like that will end up in the machine direction. And when we get our piece of paper, that means because you have the vast majority of the fibres lined up in the machine direction, your sheet of paper will have a very high MD tensile strength, but it will have a very low cross direction tensile strength. So this is not a square sheet. Fibre orientation will have other effects other than simple strength measurements. If you think about sheet dimensional stability, for example, if this gets moist, then all the fibres will expand. So it will expand equally in the cross direction as it will in the machine direction. If this sheet gets moist, because all the fibres are aligned in the machine direction and it's only the diameters that get bigger, the sheet won't get very much longer, but it will get quite a bit wider. On the machine itself, exactly the opposite effects occur. If you're drying a sheet of paper, you produce it on the wire, it's a square sheet. As you go through the press section, then you go through the dry section. In the dry section, as you drive out the water, the fibres will start to contract. Because they're dispersed equally, they will contract in the machine direction and they will contract in the cross direction equally. So you'll get a little increase in machine direction tensile strength. You get a little increase in machine direction shrinkage, and you'll get a small decal shrinkage. If you've got all the fibres aligned like this, then you'll get a lot less machine direction shrinkage, but you'll get a lot of cross direction shrinkage. So the sheet decal will come in quite a bit. So fibre orientation does have significant effects. Final thing to talk about is the discharge angle. When we fire the stock out of the flow box onto the wire, the angle with which it lands on the wire is quite important. This is the ideal angle, so we need to consider the two extremes. If you fire the angle too steeply, what will happen is you've got your forming fabric there, you'll force the fibres through the forming fabric, so you'll end up with poor fibre retention. If they go all the way through the fibre, all the way through the forming fabric, they'll go down to their fluence or through the fibre recycling plant. If they get stuck in the forming fabric, then you've got two other potential problems. What happens when the sheet gets to the couch and it's separated from the forming fabric? What happens to those fibres? Either those fibres will stay in the forming fabric and you will pull them out of the sheet, so you'll leave pinholes in your sheet, or you will pull the fibre out of the forming fabric, but it'll be standing up then. So the underside of the sheet will be full of standing up fibres, so you'll end up with a very hairy sheet. If you fire it at too shallow an angle, then you can actually trap air here. So air will get trapped between the stock and the forming fabric. And then the stock will not be able to land because you've got this cushion of air. So it will skid along the surface of the forming fabric before it eventually makes contact. So that will move the wet line down towards the couch. It'll interfere with drainage. So again, not a good situation to be in. So a summary of what we've talked about in this session. Formation, the more dilute, the better the formation. Flowbox ways of organising, velocity forming, which is what we use for most paper making, and pressure forming, particularly for tissue, where you've got a lot of water to remove. Efflux ratio, you've got drag, where the wire is moving faster than the stock, and that will align the fibres in the machine direction. Then you've got rush, where the wire is moving slower, and that will give you a much more squarer sheet with more randomly organised fibres. And finally, you've got the discharge angle. The discharge angle can either be too steep or too low. You read about the discharge angle. If you look at the specification for your forming fabric, the manufacturers should quote something known as the forming force. And the angle with which your jet hits the fabric could be resolved into a horizontal force and a vertical force. That vertical force is what we call the forming force, so it can be calculated. Thank you for listening to this tutorial, and you can follow us on any of the social media.